Okay, so today we're going to be doing Module 1, Lesson 10. This is actually the last lesson that we are doing before we take our first test. Our test will be on Tuesday, so we're going to finish up Lesson 10 today and on Monday, and then you'll be taking your test. So make sure that you are paying attention, you're following along, and at the end of class when you're doing your work, please make sure that you're asking questions to help yourself understand. The objective for today's lesson is to model the distributive property with arrays to decompose units as a strategy to multiply. The materials you need for today are your online whiteboard, or if you have your whiteboard, dry erase marker, and dry eraser at home, you can use that instead. Our teaching style we're going to continue to follow is where I do a problem, we do a problem together, and then you do a problem to show what you've learned. We do have some new vocabulary terms. So first we have the distributive property, which is multiplying a number by a group of numbers added together. Going along hand in hand is decompose. And to decompose is to break something into parts. So these two vocab terms kind of go together in our lesson today. And you can see from our ghosts here, we have this whole array, but we broke it down, okay, or decomposed it into two parts. The first part we figured out was one row of 2, and that equaled 2 ghosts. The bottom part is 2 rows of 2, and that equals 4 ghosts, because we can skip out by 2s. Now what I did is I took that equation, and I'm adding it to this equation. Okay, so I'm adding my top part and my bottom part together to figure out how many does 3 rows of ghosts equal, because all together I have 1, 2, 3 rows of ghosts. So I'm breaking it down or decomposing it into 2 easier problems, and then I'm going to put those together to figure out the harder problem of 3 times 2. Well, I know 1 times 2 equals 2, and 2 times 2 equals 4, and if I add 2 plus 4, I get 6, which means 3 times 2 equals 6, okay? And that is what we're going to be practicing today. So first up, I am going to draw an array to represent the total number of guitar strings on 3 guitars. I don't know much about guitars, but our guitar strings for this example are going to have 6 strings. So let the number of strings on one guitar be 1 row. So if I'm saying that each row is the number of strings on one guitar, and I'm being told that this guitar has 6 strings, then each row is going to have 6, and I'm going to do rectangles today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, well, I have 3 guitars, so I need 3 rows just like that. So here's my second row of 6 and my third row of 6. Okay, and remember, you don't have to be writing this part. You could just be watching what I am doing and following along, okay? So here is my array representing these 3 guitars that I have. Now it says make a dotted line below the first row to show just one guitar. So I'm going to put a line right here, and that shows me that the stuff or the row on top of the line is just 1 guitar, and what's below the line is 2 guitars. Now I need to write and solve a multiplication sentence to describe each part of your array. Well, up top here, I have one row of 6, okay, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strings on the guitar, and that equals 6, because we just counted them. There's only 6 in that row. Below that, I have 2 rows of 6, and now we have to figure out what that equals, okay? Well, I can count each of them, or I can skip count, okay? We haven't really skip counted by 6s, but we know that this row is 6, so I'm going to start at 6 and keep counting on. Ready? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 2 rows of 6 equals 12. Another way I could do that is just count by 2's 6 times. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay, so I have 2 problems now, and I've solved them for each part of my array. The top part is 1 times 6, and the bottom part is 2 times 6. So now it says, it's written this new equation for us. It says, notice that the symbols around my multiplication expressions, so these things on the side over here, these are called parentheses. Go ahead and say that word with me. Parentheses. Again, parentheses. Okay, so those are parentheses. So what I did, just like with my ghosts, is I took my problem from the top, which is 1 times 6, and I put that in parentheses over here. And I'm adding it to the bottom part, which is 2 times 6. So I'm doing 1 times 6 plus 2 times 6. And you can see that over here. 1 times 6, which is the top, plus 2 times 6, which is the bottom. And now I'm saying that should equal 6 plus 12. Well, that's because the top part actually equals 6, and I'm adding that to the bottom part, which equals 12. So that's why I'm adding 6 plus 12. Okay, so really all I've done is broken down this array into 2 parts, okay? And I solved those 2 parts, and now I'm putting those 2 parts back together. So I broke it apart, and now I'm putting it back together to figure out what my answer is. Okay, so now I have 1 times 6 plus 2 times 6, okay? And I'm trying to figure out what that equals. I know that was adding 6 and 12. Down here it says my parentheses show how I make groups. How did I rearrange the groups? So now you'll notice that what happened is it turned into 1 plus 2 times 6. So what I did is I realized that both numbers are getting multiplied by 6. So I just put that together right here. And that left me with my 1 and my 2. So I took my 1 and my 2 and I'm adding them together right here. Okay? So we're just further breaking it down. Look back at the array. Do 1 and 2 represent the number of groups or the size of the groups? So this 1 and this 2. We're trying to figure out, is that the number of groups or the size of the group? Remember, number of groups is the same thing as the number of rows. And the size of the groups is the same thing as how many in each row. And then our next question is, well, what does the 6 represent then? I'm going to put you in breakout rooms for you to discuss, okay? So you're figuring out, what does the 1 and 2 represent? The number of rows or the size of the row? What does the 6 represent? The number of rows or the size of the row? All right, go ahead and I'm going to put you in breakout rooms and then we'll come back and discuss. Okay, so what you and your group may have discussed is that 1 and 2 are the number of rows or the number of groups, whereas the 6 is the size of the group. So let's take a look at why that is. Well, 1, there's 1 row up here. 2, there's 2 rows down here. So 1 and 2 are the number of rows, or they are the number of groups if you were to group them. Whereas 6 is the size of the group, because each group has 6 rectangles in it. Okay, so now let's take a look at our problem and how we solved it. We took our 1 and our 2, and we had 1 times 6 and 2 times 6. Remember, 1 times 6 was the top, 2 times 6 was the bottom. And then we changed it so that the 1 and the 2 we added together, and the 6 got moved by itself. Well, that ended up giving us 1 plus 2 equals 3. So then we just have 3 times 6. Well, altogether we had 3 rows and each row had 6. How did we figure out that that equals 18? Well, remember we said that 1 times 6 equaled 6, and 2 times 6 equaled 12, and 6 plus 12 equals, well, let's start with 12 and add 6. Ready? 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. That's where we got our 18 from. So we're saying that this that we decomposed earlier should be the same as our overall equation, which is 3 times 6, because altogether we had 3 guitars with 6 strings each. So 3 times 6 equals 18. Another way we could check our work is to skip count by 3s 6 times. Count with me. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. And we know 3 times 6 equals 18. But let's think back to the problem we're solving. 18 what? It's not just 18 because we were talking about guitars. It's 18 guitar strings. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to a problem where you are doing it with me. So on your personal whiteboard or on your online whiteboard, I want you to show an array with 5 rows of 2. I'll give you a minute to get your 5 rows of 2. So 2 in each row. I'm going to go ahead and start drawing my 5 rows of 2. So if you need help, you can watch mine. Okay, so I have 5 rows of 2. I know I needed 5 rows, so I started by making a column of 5. And I needed 2 in each row, so then I did 2 in each row. Now it says draw a line after the second row. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line under my second row. So I am breaking it down right now. Write and solve a multiplication sentence to describe each part of your array. So this is the part that I want you to do. We've drawn that line. we're breaking it down. So for the top part, you're going to have blank times blank equals blank. And for the bottom part, you're going to have blank times blank equals blank. Go ahead and take a minute to fill those equations in. Okay, let's take a look. First up at the top here, I have 2 rows. So my first number is 2. 2 rows of 1, 2. There's 2 in each row. So at top, I have 2 rows of 2. Let's go ahead and skip count that. 2, 4. 2 times 2 equals 4. I'll give you a minute to correct that on your whiteboard if you need to. Okay, now let's look at the bottom part, or the part of my array below the line. I have 1, 2, 3 rows. 3 rows of, well, the size of my row hasn't changed. There's still 2 in each row. So that second number still is a 2. 3 rows of 2. And now let's skip count. 2, 4, 6. So 3 rows of 2 equals 6. So the top part of my equation equals 4 circles. The bottom part of my equation equals 6 circles. Let's distribute. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each part of my equation, okay? So I'm going to move up here to the top and start with my 2 times 2. And I'm going to add it to the bottom part of my equation, which is 3 times 2. Okay, so I took 2 times 2 and I'm adding it to 3 times 2. Well, I know that's the same as adding my 4 plus my 6. Okay, because these are equal, or they are the same. So adding this part of my equation together is the same as adding this part of my equation together. Okay, well, let's go ahead and solve the last part first. We have 4 plus 6, so I'm going to start with 4 and add on 6 more. Ready? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I know this part equals 10. Now, remember, both of these are getting multiplied by 2. So I'm going to keep that times 2 part, and I'm going to take my 2 and my 3, which are separated right now, and I'm going to put those together. 2 plus 3. Because really what I'm saying is I'm taking my 2 rows on top and my 3 rows on bottom, and I'm putting them together, and that tells me how many rows do I have all together. Well, 2 plus 3 is 5. So I have 5 times 2, because the times 2 stays the same, because we have 2 in each row, and that doesn't change. So if my distribution is correct, 5 times 2 should equal 10, because I just move my 10 back down. Let's check our work. Let's go back and let's solve 5 times 2. Go ahead and skip count by 2s with me. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So, does 5 times 2 equal 10? Yes, it does. Okay. So, distribution, it may seem like a lot of work, but what it's really helping your brain do is figure out how to break problems down into easier problems to make it easier for you to solve. So 5 times 2 may not be hard for us to do right now, but as we start doing problems that are much harder, distributing will be a really great tool on our tool belt, okay? So right now we're practicing with problems that are a little bit easier, but that's only because we want to be able to learn how to distribute before the problems get a little more complicated. Now we're at the part where you are going to do your homework on your own. You're going to show me what you have learned. You do need to really pay attention to what each part of the problem is asking for, okay? So up at the top, you may notice that it's asking you to solve 6 times 3. So you can just count by 3 6 times. But then it's making you distribute. So it's making you break the problem down into 2 different parts and then add those parts together, okay? So make sure if you have questions about which part it's asking about that you ask me so that we're doing it correctly. All right, go ahead and open up that Kami homework and get started.